This podcast is intended for educational purposes only and is not intended to replace therapeutic services of any kind. Please refer to the list of references provided if you need support. Welcome to Sessions with Sara Cate and Ashley. This is session number 3. Number three. And, we really contemplated on what our first actual topic should be. And so we thought we'd go light,
something fun,
easy breezy, and roll out the gate with shame.
Yeah.
So very non-threatening, non-difficult topic.
Not light.
Really.
Really
hard. So, Ashley and I probably have, and I know we do, different things we want to share, and different perspectives to bring to today's conversation. As always, I'll just throw out the little disclaimer that at any point, if you feel activated or triggered, to access the resources that we have listed, as well as to take care of yourself. And remember that some of the information might feel really relevant and resonant, and some of it might not. And you have the opportunity to take from this what feels useful and leave the rest. This is not a one-size-fits-all podcast, and it is not a one-size-fits-all topic. Let's just be honest.
And, we're sharing how we feel about shame and some of the thoughts that we have around it and what we've seen with our clients. But there are numerous ways that you can look at shame. And so that's something to keep in mind, as well, as we're here to share our experience.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that they're good experiences, but you might find that, like she said, that you connect with some of it and you connect with somebody else's view on shame more. And that's great. We're all just gathering information.
Mm-hmm. Gathering and sharing. And as always, our hope is that this finds someone somewhere, wherever they may need it. I think, to open a differentiation, and I'll probably use that word a lot, but a differentiation that I do, or a distinction that would be really useful in making, is the difference between shame and guilt.
Yeah.
And Brene Brown does an excellent job with this. She says, guilt is I did something bad. Shame is I am bad. And that is it seems like an easy concept, and yet revolutionary, because I think so often we link shame and guilt in a manner that creates an inability to dislodge us and who we are as people and who I am as a person from the action that maybe I'm not super proud of, or the thing that I did that I carry, a lot of guilt around. But it doesn't make me a bad person because I made a choice in a moment based off of the information or what I had. And so really differentiating between like guilt and shame, I think, is important to start the conversation.
Yeah, totally.
Because we will have probably a whole another thing on guilt, because I think guilt in and of itself has guilt being that I did something bad means that you have an opportunity to repair with someone.
Yeah.
But shame is an experience felt by you.
Yeah.
We're the ones who carry our own shame.
Yes.
People do shame us. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of people who like to throw a lot of shame. I see it a lot with religious abuse and spiritual abuse and parental abuse towards their children, of shame being a choice of punishment, or a change, agent of change in a child's behavior or someone's behavior in a community. Shame is really used as a tool to control people. So I do know that other people can shame us. However, what we're going to talk really about today is the lived experience of shame in our own bodies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to, because I think yours was started with that a little bit, with what it feels like.
And, when I think of shame, and again, this is speaking from like my personal experience, but how I would see shame present in the woman on the table that I was working with. So something happens, there's an event, right? Either something or somebody says something to us to shame us, or we do something big in our life that makes us feel shame. And then there's some kind of reflection that happens in the first place to even make us feel this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of, I use the example of like looking at yourself in the mirror with some of my clients is like, if you're really happy and you look at yourself in the mirror and you have like your favorite outfit on and your favorite lipstick, you're going to look at yourself and be like, yeah, I look great and I feel great and I'm doing great, right? And we don't look at ourselves with those same lens, like with that, through that same lens when we're feeling shame. The lens becomes distorted. And so it doesn't tell us the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that coming to the realization of like, I am bad, I'm unworthy, I am shameful at my core
Mm-hmm.
is such a lie. And getting to the point of recognizing that it's a lie and allowing yourself, Sarah talked about opportunity, but allowing yourself the opportunity to even take one step towards moving away from it, it's really fucking hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it is one of the most special things that you could do for yourself, because you're showing that opportunity in that moment to just take one step. It could be the tiniest step. It could be that you're just going to go sit down and have a quiet moment with yourself. It could be anything. It could be taking a drink of water.
I was going to say like an act of self-compassion would be
Yes.
like, I'm going to drink a cup of tea.
Yes.
And then I'm going to revisit this.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Or, identifying like what is going on in your body, right? Well, and we'll talk about that in a second, but giving that step, that initial step can be truly
Mm-hmm.
transformative because you decided to do it, right? Like you are the one who decided to take back that little bit of power. Because shame, again, like you are feeling this like deep sense that you are bad, that you are no longer good. And that's not your power. You're not in your power, right? Something else has a hold of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so just that tiniest act of self-compassion can give you the slightest little glimpse of like, okay, but it is possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And another, like when we were talking about like just feeling it in your body, we all feel things in different places. And I think there's like the common ones. A lot of people will feel it in like their gut or their stomach or their, chest, their heart, their diaphragm, or they'll like feel like they can't speak or whatever it is. But it doesn't matter necessarily where you feel it in your body, just that you're able to identify.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you identify, you're communicating with yourself, right? We can't just like always be so separate, mind and body. We have to be together. And so if you can say like, oh yeah, I feel that, just by saying, I feel this shame in my stomach. I feel it kind of like right here in my diaphragm. So like when I acknowledge that, it's like I'm giving that little piece of me a hug, or I'm like pulling a chair up to the table to be like, hey, let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Just by identifying where it's at. That's it. I don't have to say anything else.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because I think you make a really important point, which is like what we keep in the shadows, what we keep hidden. Like we might not even realize we're experiencing shame. And the denial of it or the rejection of it or like the suppression of it is what actually makes it turn into the demon, the dragon, the monster. It eats away at us.
Yeah.
And you, Ashley, saying, if I'm like feeling this in my body and I notice it in my diaphragm, us just sitting with like, shit, I feel shame again, or I'm feeling shame around this thing, like that gives it this permission to exist. And then how we get to take care of ourselves differently, just even the awareness around it is like, that's a loving act. Yeah. That's an act of compassion towards it. Cause it's like, I'm not going to pretend that I don't feel this. I'm not going to deny my own emotional experience, which we've been taught to do, which we'll sure talk about. But yeah. So for you, my question is, when you do notice it and when you feel the shame, it's in your diaphragm and you're kind of scoping it out, you're looking at like what it feels like, the texture, the shape, the size, whatever. What for you, Ashley, is your next move?
Yeah. So good. So I kind of want to back up and tell you what my next move would have been. Because
yeah. Let's go with old Ash.
Yeah. Because like I said, it's really fucking hard. It's really, really hard. Especially like with what you said about how we're like told to not
feel things,
to not feel things, or if we are feeling things, just to push it down. And I also have a little tiff with people who tell you that you have to just sit and be in your emotion. Like if you're feeling it, you have to just sit and be with it, because it'll just
I'm gonna have to get one of the I'm gonna have to get to one of the sound buttons to make the server noise. That was, by the way, that was me thumbs downing. I know people aren't watching this necessarily, so I was zerbering with my left hand, thumbs downing with my right. There's the visual. I know you need it.
Okay, anyway. That was great. I was literally looking like, what is going on?
I mean, but like
I know.
I vehemently disagree with that. So
I know. And okay, so here's the thing, like, yes, we want to identify what we're feeling. We don't want to shove it down, but forcing yourself to sit in a place where all you're doing is just spiraling further and further into the chaos, that's not supportive.
Well, it's not gonna be useful.
That's not helpful. Yeah, you're just gonna keep doing that, and it's going to take a greater act to pull you out of it. And so maybe the whole point of this is, in the past, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
And I would be freaking the F out.
Yeah.
And I would retreat, I would isolate,
Would you sabotage?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%.
That's a mechanism. I mean, that's a hard mechanism for shame. We sabotage other things based off of the lens you're talking about. I am bad, therefore I don't deserve good things.
Right. And when you're looking through that lens, you can't separate out the different parts of your life. That all becomes one and it all becomes bad. And so instead of me saying like, okay, I have shame around this one thing, but like, I'm the best friend that there is, or whatever it is, right? Whatever example you want to use. So that's what I used to do, would spiral, sabotage, cry. Now I still might cry.
Which is a beautiful thing that you do.
Yes. Usually in the shower. Stay in there for a long time.
Tears are a gracious release from our bodies.
And so, but now so like I identify, and really I can pretty much predict now, like where I'm going to feel certain things. My diaphragm holds a lot. My diaphragm is where I will physically be in it. And honestly, if I'm somewhere in public where like I don't want to like cry, maybe because I'm in the middle of the grocery store or something, I literally will physically take my hand and place it over my diaphragm, because it's like giving it a little bit of a container to be. It doesn't feel as unsafe if I can control where it's at. And so when I don't, it feels like it's gonna like explode out of me. Like it's gonna just like
unmanaged
all over the place.
Yeah.
And so if I can put my hands on that part of my body, I give it a little bit, it's like a little mini hug.
So sweet.
And we're corny.
Yeah, but you know what?
But
does it work?
Yes. So that's what I do. And then I have, like, when I'm ready, I don't force myself to be ready. I used to maybe try to force myself to either talk about it or journal about it. But now I wait until that intense period has kind of passed, and I will often journal about it. And then I let it be. And if I need to revisit those pages, I will. But those are my like initial steps. And sometimes the journaling, I'm not a big like page by page by page.
Dear diary, today I felt shame.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. I don't do that.
I can't imagine.
I mean, I am impressed with people who can journal page by page. I am more of there's like random clusters of words all over the page, because it's like random thoughts that need to get out. And I feel I have tried just like putting it in a note in my phone. I don't get the same release as physically writing. Some people do. So, but for me, it's writing. And so I like write it out, and then I close it. I like close the book and I set it down. And like I said, sometimes I do need to go back to those pages, and sometimes I don't. And I think the practice comes in then with the whatever you want to call it, grace. Sometimes I'm like, that's so lame. But like what whatever you want
Words
to
are
call
limiting, but
yes.
like, yes,
Yes.
the energy of grace or
Yes.
compassion or sensitivity.
Yes.
Kindness.
Yeah. The practice and where
Insert
it
here.
doesn't necessarily get, because shame, you never want to feel shame. Like it doesn't feel good. It's never going to like feel good to feel shame. But what can become or feel maybe more supported is what I'm trying to say is practicing that initial step, finding whatever works for you, how to get it out, and then allowing myself the time to like listen to what actually I need to do. Sometimes I need to move my body physically more vigorously than before. So it might be a run or like a really intense workout. Sometimes it's just more of a deep centered journal session. Sometimes it's a really big cry session. Like it doesn't like, I don't know that I have like one specific like larger thing. And then it's building like the work that I do when I feel good is what helps me come back to the lens knowing that I'm not actually bad. So it's not the work that I do when I'm like feeling super shameful.
In the depths.
Yeah, because it's not, I feel like there's just going to be some lies that creep through, right? Because you're not looking at yourself through those rose-colored lenses.
Is it rose?
We should have, I don't know.
What color would it be?
Isn't that what they say?
Well, rosy color, yes, but like that's like rosy colored glasses is like happy, everything's fine.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like I'm not like looking at myself through those rose-colored
like everything's
glasses.
good.
Yeah, I can't just like put them on my face.
What color is the shame glasses? What are the lenses tinted to?
That feels dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moody.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Not to be confused with what color I'm normally wearing.
I mean, we can be moody.
We anyway. Yeah, so that's
and I appreciate the idea when working with shame that you're presenting, because I think for so many of my clients, and including myself, right? Because this is like, we are human. And so we will feel this. We will feel this, be it from somebody else, be it from our own actions, whatever it might be. Like nobody is safe from this. And if someone tells you that they aren't, or that they are, worry. Like let your spidey senses go off, because if we're overriding emotions so much that we don't feel all of them, we're locked down somewhere. We're bypassing, we're not actually present for what's happening. And let me just say, for a long time, we can live like that. And sometimes that's a defense mechanism. So I'm not going to change anyone's defense mechanisms or shame anyone, their defense mechanism or their strategies for organizing their life how they need to by shutting certain emotions down. Sometimes that is survival. But if it's coming more from an egoic, like, I don't have shame, I don't do that, there's something blocked there typically. But to your point of not having it be, and this is why I think this conversation is so damn important, to not have it be that you're not going to feel shame or that you'll feel good in your shame.
Yeah.
To have it be this experience that's like, I am feeling shame about this, and it is gross and it is hard and it is uncomfortable as hell.
Yeah.
What can I do?
Yeah.
If I first acknowledge it and give it that compassion, give it that awareness of like, I see you, I'm going to acknowledge that you exist. And then I take one step to the right, or not even a step to the right. It might be a shimmy.
Exactly.
It might be a scooch, but like just an inch adjacent to looking at yourself through the shame lens of like, I know I'm feeling shame. It doesn't mean I have to be shameful, bad, angry. Like it takes us away from saying I am shame or I am bad, I am unworthy, to I feel.
Well, and it's understanding that acceptance of whatever emotion you have doesn't mean that you have to like it.
Yeah.
We don't have to like to feel
these shitty ones.
Feel like it sucks. And so like, just because you accept it doesn't mean that you're saying like, I accept this and I welcome this into my life.
I surrender to it.
That's not realistic.
But you're giving permission for it to exist, not liking it.
Yeah.
And then what I think it does, to your point, is it allows breath to come back to the diaphragm, or like just this moment to get our head above water and go, am I really this version of myself that that I don't want to be? Am I really bad? Am I really unvaluable? Am I really invaluable? Am I really unworthy? Grammar police will come at us. I know it. Sometimes I make up words. That's the thing, but it really, it really gives us just a moment, just a breath to say, I'm not submerged in this.
Yeah.
I can see outside of it. And it doesn't mean that you won't slip back into it. And like you were saying, you don't override it. You don't shut it down. You don't try to push yourself past where you're at. And like, that's the hard part. That is the hard part. Staying in the valley of whatever the emotions are and whatever you're feeling, having to acknowledge it, not having to sit in it by going, you know, and then hopefully if you can get your head above water, then you're like, what can I do? You know,
which is like having like the tiniest, which is why I said, like, take a drink of water, like
something simple.
Something like the smallest act to remind your body that you are still taking care of it. Cause that's like literally what it is. It's feeling like it's in more of a survival, holy crap, like your fight or flight is like, what are we going to do? Cause we're feeling really low. And anytime you're feeling really low, this isn't necessarily just for shame. One small act of like, no, I still got you. That's how you build the trust within yourself. That's how you're going to build the trust of your body so that you can tell what it is saying to you. So you don't have to maybe spiral so low the next time you feel shame. Again, it doesn't mean that it's going to feel good, right?
Well, yeah. Or different.
But, right.
You might experience shame the same way a long time.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that is the reprogramming, the renegotiation, like, you know, trauma healing. We throw out these words like trauma healing and trauma resolution. Like that is an arduous, lengthy process. And like learning to first identify your emotions, and then secondly, being able to know how to work with them when we have been so socialized and programmed away from those things is so hard. I mean, this is some foundational shit that I do with clients, like for months at a time, sometimes, of just even being able to recognize this is shame and not guilt, or this is shame and not fear, or this is shame and not resistance. Like all of these things that we just have not been able to distinguish for ourselves in our lifetimes because of whatever reason, you know, whomever didn't reflect to us as children, or that our emotions were okay to have, and what they looked like and how to express them, you know, in a way that was helpful to our little bodies. You know, it's going to be hard for us to identify it as adults.
Yeah,
really, truly.
And so when you're just starting, because I think like the research shows like we're taught 5 emotions as children: happy, sad, mad, angry. I don't know what the 5th one is. Anyways,
frustration.
Maybe, yeah. When you're starting, like she said, we don't know how to identify these emotions.
Yeah.
And so you can, and maybe we'll put in the show notes, like a list of emotions. And one of the most eye-opening things I did was look at a list of emotions. Just, you can Google a list of emotions and put a check next to the ones that you know what they are. And it's probably not going to be very many right away. And so when you're feeling something like this, if you're not sure if it's shame or guilt, or if it's whatever it is, describe more in depth of what you can truly feel. What are you physically feeling? What do you know for sure? You don't have to put a title to it. Like just start there. And then you will be able to, I mean, like this is a practice, right? Like you will get better at identifying what you're feeling. But in the beginning, don't feel like you have to be there. Like, oh, I should be able to identify shame now. I'm 35 years old.
Yeah, no,
it's not.
That's not how it works.
It's not how. Yeah.
And I'll put some resources too.
What was that?
My candle, the wax is stripping down. Just burning down the tent.
Yeah. Tell me how do you? So I'm going to give an example of a really big like life event, right? I just shut down my office. And I felt shame about it. And so how, if you're working with somebody, if they have like this really big event, because that's really awesome. That's really good. I'm really excited. I'm super happy. And it's like the best thing I've ever done. And I feel shame. Right. And so how, if somebody is coming into you with like something big and exciting and awesome, what do you do?
to work with the shame around that.
Yeah. Or how do you feel about that? Do you see that?
Oh, great.
Tell me everything.
Great question, Ashley. I think one of the ways that I recognize it's like a sneaky shame.
Sneaky.
Is the sneaky the shame is like, I made a shitty choice because I maybe had shitty options, or like I'm not in a place where I can really make clear choices. So I made a choice and I'm feeling shame about that because it wasn't the one I wanted to make. Like, we're also talking about a great deal of like privilege often when we can like not make decisions that will lead to shame. So I want to put that disclaimer out there. Like, sometimes we have to make choices out of survival, out of our where we're at, that can induce shame in us, and we might not have control over that. So like, I want to name that. The sneaky shame, though, that we're kind of talking about, of like these life events where like things are changing for you. And this is going to, kind of tip into like what happens, what's the impact on others when you make choices that affect you, and how we carry the shame of our families. Maybe it's our familial shame and our family culture. Maybe it's the community culture that we're in, or societal culture that we're in. Maybe it's the professional culture that we're in, and we're trying to do something different and trying to be innovative, whatever it might be. Like, when we're in a place that me doing something different is going to be disruptive for other people, it's going to shake the boat, right? Is that it? Rock the boat.
Rock it. You can shake my boat. Shake, girl. Rock.
Okay, anyway, it's the same. But if it's going to be disruptive to somebody else, there a shame can come in. Like, because I'm othering myself, because I'm now saying I want to do something differently because I feel in my body that I deserve something different, or I believe that I know I can do something different. It isn't guilt. It really is shame comes in that says, how dare you believe you deserve that?
Yeah.
Why, Ashley, are you going to launch this different direction, different path for yourself, and leave this old life behind that fit the mold, that fit in the box? And now you get to do something innovative and different, and maybe really love your life. And then there's this story that comes in that says what?
Well, I shouldn't really deserve that.
I don't get to love my life.
Right.
And that comes
like
from
the hamster wheel of being in this, like, no, I have to struggle, or like, no, if I'm not constantly grinding, I'm not going to have what I desire.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I can't actually really be in control of my life.
Right.
And that comes from like, shame and unworthiness and lack of value and lack of purpose all kind of swim together in the same crock pot. Somebody's reference.
Crock-pot.
I mean, yeah. So do I. But like, kids are using Instapots these days or some shit. Air fryers. Heard about, love that one.
Yeah.
Been trying it. Anyways, strong jump to air fryers.
Strong jump.
Like, they're all shame, unworthiness, lack of value, lack of purpose, right? Those are the big three, I call them, of like what is initiating somebody's shame. And the way I work with that with clients is helping them first, number one, to your point, understand where they feel in their body. Being a somatic therapist, encouraging and supporting people. Again, this means that you have some safe connection to your body. If you do not have a safe connection to your body, these things are going to be really, really hard to do. And that has to be established first and supported first, before this
so
other
if somebody doesn't have the safety in, because that's a really good point. Yeah. There has to be some right? There has to be some to your body that feels safe in order to allow you to even say, like, I'm feeling it in my diaphragm. Right. And so is there something that somebody could do if they are like, well, one, I've never even asked myself that question, if my body feels safe. The first step would be like to ask yourself if your body feels safe. But like, what would you recommend they do?
So I like to work, we've all been taught the emotion names, right? Like the emotion names. So we say shame. Shame is a felt experience. Yes. And typically we subconsciously maybe even feel it in our body, but we might not be aware of it if we're not connected to our actual bodies. And so if we put the word shame out there, I have people essentially describe what they were to believe shame to be in a color, in an object, in an image, in a shape, what texture, what size, if it's sitting out here in the space between typically me and my client.
Yeah.
And you describe it to me out here.
Yeah.
And typically, and especially if it's like a weight, if it has a density and a weight to it, or if it has a texture to it, it's rough. I would imagine it would be sharp. That's describing sensation.
Yes.
That's describing. So like what we've been so socialized to do is name something and then leave it.
Yeah.
I feel shame. Okay. Well, I feel shame means you're feeling shame. And so I have to say to my clients, what does that actually mean? What do you feel? And like that is like, well, I don't know. That's excellent. I always say you don't know. No, I don't want to. All of those things are in the room with me when I'm working, because if that renegotiation back towards your own body is not there and there isn't safety in that connection, we're going to work outside of it.
Yep.
Until, like Ashley was saying, the buy-in and the safety is there. And so working with shame, either in the body or outside of the body, though, really we can find a lot of information. So someone tells me shame feels really rough or really sharp. What actions, what awarenesses do you have around things being rough and sharp, right? And like, how do we support rough, sharp things, right? And so then it starts to become a conversation of, well, what's the opposite of that? The opposite of that is soft. The opposite of that is light. And what we start to notice when we give ourselves permission to say, here's what I'm noticing or what I'm aware of or what I'm feeling, if you have access to that, then we look at what an opposite or an alternative is of like, oh, well, soft, light, airy, whatever that might be. And that brings our brain into a conversation of like, shame is not the only experience right now. When we're talking about shame, there's also that's rough, sharp, contracting, yada, yada, yada. And we say, okay, but like the opposite is like light, soft, feathery. Our brain starts to click into like, oh, I'm not in the, I don't have to, this isn't the only experience. I'm not in the vortex of this shame. That is even another trick to moving like shame adjacent and taking a drink of water.
Yes. I was just going to say, like, when you think of those two ends, the goal is not to like jump from one to the other, right? Because that could be super disruptive, but like what she's saying, you're giving yourself just another option. You're giving your brain another option that both can exist at the same time. And you don't have to stay here. This is not the sharp, hard, rigid is not the only place. And so just knowing that there's another option that allows you to say like, oh, okay, there is another option. I can't really see the way there right now.
But there's something else.
There's something else.
Yeah. And it's super like it's we can talk about sneaky shame. We can talk about shame by choice when we need to, but like all of it really comes down to like being able to give our brains and our bodies something else to hold on to in those moments. So it isn't, you don't go into the abyss. Like cause shame it has a gravity to it. That's, the way I talk about it a lot with clients and even myself. The shame in my body that I feel is like an anchor at my diaphragm that pulls me down into the earth. I mean, it is like a heavy, the bottom is dropping out, dread, right? And, I grew up in a very loving home, but around a lot of religion. And that religion, whether or not it was intended to imbue shame into the culture around me, it did. And there was expectations and there were judgments, and not for my mother. She will probably listen to this. Mother, you did wonderful. Disclaimer.
Shout out to you.
Shout out to Kay. But like and not from her, but like from the community, the religious community that I grew up in, there was an expectation. And a performative quality and
yes,
a belief system that pushed me into a category of like, I am bad if I do not perform, act, and do as these scriptures and leaders say.
Yes.
And so I think for me, having lived that experience and had to do a lot of my own work, I mean, I've been in extensive somatic therapy for a decade now of really working on this stuff myself, because I know that I carry this, and my humanity is what I really try to bring into the work with my clients. So that way I'm always coming through a compassionate and unconditional lens around this, because I know it's not easy, and asking clients to feel into these things and to notice these things that are so gnarly and so difficult. Like, it isn't the choice. Like, sometimes I'm like, it's like, I help people get comfortable with the uncomfortable, and like, people don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. We don't want to feel uncomfortable.
Well, because it feels like they're like, when you said like, it feels like the bottom dropping out. That's what it feels like. And that's really scary. And while, we, on the other side, you might be able to say, okay, there was actually a floor, right? Like,
I typically find that I'm laid out on it. I am covered in snot and tears on it, but I find it.
But in the middle of it, not helpful.
Yeah.
It's not helpful to be like, well, this too shall pass.
Yes.
Like,
yes. Thank you, Ashley.
It's not helpful to be like, well, there's a reason.
Like, look at the silver lining.
Yes, it is. That's not helpful. It's just not. And sometimes we just need that reminder that there's another option that is coexisting at the same time. Not that we're going to jump over to like a cloud, right? If we're at the bottom, but just knowing, our brain knowing, giving it that reminder.
One breath. It's like one breath to be like, this isn't I am not only my shame. I am not only my fear. I am not only my doubt. Right. It like helps bring that dynamic experience to it. And I think, what I'm hoping this conversation can hold is like so much sensitivity and like awareness that we picked one of the most difficult topics to start with.
The first one.
So like, we're probably scaring people off left and right from deciding to listen. But like, what I hope is it normalizes the fact that like, number one, we all feel shame. We all do. I don't care. Any culture, any religion, any race, any gender, any sexual orientation, we feel it for some reason. And it is an existence wound that we'll talk about that shit in here. But like, it is shame really is such a profound force.
It is.
In how we view ourselves and why we make choices. And so normalizing it, like what I love you did, Ashley, was talk about where you felt it in your body and like how to work with it, because like, that is not the conversation that we're having. We're normally saying, make better choices, do different things, create different action. And it's like, well, if I'm not able to, how do I like give myself some reprieve when I feel it?
Yeah.
And also like, I want to name that shame sometimes is a mechanism that has been utilized in our lives to keep us safe.
Yeah.
I do think that while it has been used as a punishment and as a control force by some people who don't have our best interests or who are not looking out for us in a way that is safe for us, I recognize that. I also do work with people that shame keeps them safe. It keeps them maybe in their family. It keeps them in their community. It keeps them in a relationship, at their job. Like, sometimes
with their friends.
Yeah. Sometimes it unfortunately keeps us where we are if we need to stay. And that this, hopefully, these kind of having these conversations around it will hopefully, if you are in that position, if you feel stuck And like your shame might be a mechanism of safety, be it that safety not helpful, but safety as in I will survive if I keep doing this, that this helps you just alleviate some of it, some of the depth of it, or maybe just a little bit of the gray. It makes it just a little bit lighter or a little bit different or a little bit, energetically gives it some shift, because you might have to use this. Like it's not lost on us that working with clients and working with society in the front facing positions, like we witness a lot of people doing what they can with what they have, because it is going to be, their life depends on it in a lot of ways. So we do want to name that, like, it isn't always a choice to choose to do something else, and to choose a less shameful choice. So hopefully these things can help you navigate it if you're in it, and if you need to be in it.
Yeah.
Does that make
sense? Yes, Sara Cate. That makes sense.
Great. I really shouldn't ask that question, because like it might not.
Well, it might not. It might not for some people. I say that a lot too. Like, that makes sense.
And then the answer can always be no.
Ashley, what you literally said sounds bad.
Absolutely not. Do you have any more to add?
Well, probably, but maybe not right now.
I mean, it might be a part 2. Like we will have to kind of sit with this.
Are we ever really done talking? No.
Well,
answer no.
That is a no.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hot air.
I think that but I think that like what you said, it gives the opportunity for there to be maybe just a little bit of a shift. It's not going to be like, an overnight transformation. That's not what we're after. That's not real. It wouldn't be sustainable. Yeah. It wouldn't truly nurture you. It could create a lot more unsafetyness, to be honest. And so that's what it is. That is the first step, is just shifting it. And then other things come from there, but that is the first step. And so I think that that's where we should leave it.
I love that. All right.
Okay, bye.
Sending love to you in the world. Goodbye.
Here she goes. Okay, bye.
She goes.